The air hung thick with the scent of pine and damp earth, a familiar perfume that clawed at James's throat with forgotten memories. 10 years. 10 years since he and Caleb had fled this place, this forgotten corner of the world their parents had called home. Now, the old farmhouse, a skeletal silhouette against the bruised twilight sky, felt less like a sanctuary and more like a tomb. Caleb, ever the stoic, simply grunted as he wrestled their battered suitcases from the back of the ancient pickup, the vehicle groaning under the weight of their reluctance. "Still smells the same," Caleb muttered, his voice a low rumble against the chirp of crickets. James said nothing. He just stared at the house, a prickle of unease tracing its way up his spine. The windows, dark and vacant, seemed to watch them, reflecting the last dying embers of the day. A shiver, not entirely from the evening chill, danced across his skin. He remembered the stories their grandmother used to tell, whispered tales of the shadows that lurked in the ancient forests, of spirits that clung to the land. Nonsense, of course. Just old wives' tales meant to keep children from wandering too far. Yet, as he followed Caleb up the crumbling flagstone path, the hairs on his arms stood on end. Inside, the silence was deafening, broken only by the creak of their footsteps on the wooden floors. Dust motes danced in the last slivers of sunlight filtering through the grimy panes, illuminating a scene frozen in time. They had promised to return, to unravel the mysteries of their past, but life, as it often did, had intervened. Until now. They spent the first few hours in a haze of unpacking and reluctant exploration. The water still ran, albeit with a rusty sputter, and the electricity, surprisingly, flickered to life. As darkness truly descended, painting the house in oppressive shadows, the sense of isolation intensified. They were miles from the nearest town, a desolate stretch of winding roads and dense woodland separating them from civilization. Caleb was in the kitchen, attempting to coax the ancient stove into submission, when the first sound came. A faint, almost imperceptible whisper of movement from upstairs. James, who was trying to untangle a frayed lamp cord in the living room, froze. "Did you hear that?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. Caleb paused, a wrench still in his hand. "Hear what?" "Upstairs. Sounded like a creak." Caleb chuckled, a dry, dismissive sound. "Old house, James. Settling. Or maybe a mouse." James tried to convince himself that Caleb was right, but the prickle of unease returned, sharper this time. He glanced at the darkened staircase, a gaping maw leading into the unknown. He remembered, vividly, the old grandfather clock at the top of the landing, its pendulum frozen in time, its face always holding the same grim expression. As Caleb's truck rattled down the long gravel driveway, James found himself alone in the vast silent house. The quiet was oppressive, punctuated only by the creaks and groans of the old timbers. He started in the attic, a dusty, cobweb-laden space filled with forgotten treasures and faded memories. Old trunks spilled open to reveal moth-eaten clothes, yellowed photographs of stern-faced ancestors, and trinkets from a bygone era. He moved slowly, methodically, a growing sense of melancholy settling over him. It was in a small, cedar chest, tucked away in a dark corner, that he found it. A child's drawing, crudely rendered but unmistakably depicting a looming, shadowy figure with glowing red eyes, standing over a prone, terrified stick figure. Below it, scrawled in a child's shaky hand, were the words, "He watches." James's blood ran cold. He remembered drawing that picture. He remembered the nightmares that followed, the nameless terror that had plagued his early childhood. A terror he had long dismissed as a child's overactive imagination. He descended the stairs, the drawing clutched tightly in his hand, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm against his ribs. The house felt colder, darker, the shadows seeming to stretch and twist into menacing shapes. He decided to check the dilapidated barn, a structure that had always held a morbid fascination for him as a child. It was a place where shadows danced, even in the brightest sunlight, a repository of forgotten farm implements and the lingering scent of hay and decay. The large wooden doors groaned open with a mournful shriek, revealing an interior swallowed by gloom. Dust motes, disturbed by the sudden influx of light, swirled in the air. James's eyes adjusted, sweeping over the rusty tools, the skeletal remains of old machinery, and the scattered bales of rotting hay. And then he saw it. In the far corner, half hidden by a mound of ancient burlap sacks, lay a figure. It was an old man, his face a mask of contorted horror, his eyes wide and vacant. His throat was a gaping, ragged wound. A dark, viscous pool spreading beneath him, soaking into the hay. His clothes were unfamiliar, not someone James recognized from their childhood. A stranger. A scream tore from James's own throat, raw and involuntary, echoing through the cavernous barn. He stumbled backward, tripping over a loose plank, his mind reeling. The man was dead, brutally murdered, and the sheer savagery of the act sent a fresh wave of terror washing over him. This wasn't a fox caught in a trap. This wasn't a coyote and a deer. This was human. This was evil. His breath hitched, his chest tightening with a suffocating fear. He scrambled to his feet, his eyes darting around the barn, searching, expecting to see a lurking shadow, a glint of something sinister in the gloom.